Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Well, we're going to pick up our conversation from last time about this one particular health issue that is getting a lot of attention lately. And many of us don't understand it or don't realize the impact that it can have on our bodies and disease and illness. And we're talking about inflammation. And it's such a big thing right now. It's been a big thing for a while, but the attention is on for some reason, and I'm not really sure, but I'm grateful it is, because it's something that can really affect us in major ways, especially when it comes to your digestive tract, your gut health. We're going to center on that today with somebody who specializes in helping people make lifestyle modifications that address our wellness concerns like inflammation. She's also somebody that particularly helps retired military women and their families, and she's back with us. Coach Lorraine is on the program. Hey, Lorraine, how you doing?
Hello, Steve. I'm doing great. And yourself?
I will be extremely honest, as I always am. I'm doing great because my gut health is so much better in the last couple of months.
Fantastic.
And I'm wondering if, I had some issues with diverticulitis and gastritis and things like that. I'm wondering if it was directly connected to some kind of inflammation. I'm not really sure, but even before we get into that, why don't we just recap for everybody what inflammation is?
Right. So inflammation is any kind of chronic condition that goes on in the body. And there is both chronic as well as acute inflammation. So acute inflammation is when you get the little boo-boo and all the white blood cells and cholesterol rushes in to kind of help repair and heal. Your blood vessels expand so that more blood comes in with the resources to make you better. But chronic inflammation is when you have little issues going on in your system, and quite often things that you're not even aware of, because it's almost like happening in the background. Certain foods that you might eat that cause irritation, when certain hormones are at a higher level than they need to be, and they keep creating situations in the body that the body doesn't really adapt to very well. And over a course of time, like I said, it becomes chronic and can turn into some other challenge or condition that we have not addressed and we need to take care of, like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and things of that nature.
Wow. Thank you for explaining it that way, because I've never viewed it in terms of the chronic situation. But it's things that we're doing that's causing the inflammation, right?
That is correct. The fun is things that we're doing that's unnoticed, things that we're doing and we keep doing, or we allow these things to continue within our body. Because every now and then we want to have a little fun, like eat some of the stuff that we shouldn't eat. There's no harm in doing that. But when you continuously doing it, like having excessive carbs, for example, because think about it. Our bodies only need 4 grams of glucose at any given time within our body. Our red blood cells only uses glucose to get as an energy source, but all our other organs can use fat or sometimes protein on the extreme case as an energy source. But on a daily diet, we are consuming anywhere from 100 to 300 grams of glucose per day. So look at that big disparity right there. It's something that we do unconscionably. And until something happens, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, diabetes, doctor's visit, we realize, oh my gosh, what am I doing wrong?
Wow. When we talk about the levels of glucose, it is scary. And I've heard most recently that it's the sugar, I guess, directed to the glucose, that is one of the biggest offenders of inflammation. And sugar is in pretty much everything we consume.
That is very true. Now, one of the things we have to give credit to our bodies. Our bodies are like a supercomputer. There are communication channels that tell, different functions what to do, different parts of our body what to do. We have our information highway, such as our bloodstream, our nervous system, our fascia, always communicating to the different organs, letting them know what to do what hormone to release, what hormone not to release. Continuous communication.
Mm.
And most of those things we don't even have to think about until something truly happens. And unfortunately, sometimes we catch those things, and other times we kind of let it go unnoticed. Anything in excess can be toxic. And the same goes for carbohydrates, which is glucose in a more complex form. So carbohydrates breaks down to glucose, and then you have your actual glucose itself, and even fructose is a form of sugar. So a lot of folks who think that a high, doing fruit fast, juice fast, I should say, and not kind of balancing it out with vegetables are actually doing themselves harm.
Wow. I met a guy 2 nights ago. I joined a group, just a guy group. Yeah, I've never done it before, and it's great because everybody talks about their challenges, their health, and everything. And one guy said he did a fast, and he said, I never thought I'd be able to do it. He was planning to do 72 hours. He went over 4 days of not eating. And he said, I felt great. He said, I didn't crave anything. A little rough in the beginning, but shortly thereafter, he said, I feel fantastic. I've never felt better before. So I think that says something. We're afraid to not eat, but once you get over the hump, if you will, our body's got everything it needs. You just got to, you got to maintain it and properly give it what it needs. But you bring up some pretty heavy points there in that our bodies are regulating themselves, and then we're just screwing it up by putting stuff in that's not supposed to be there or in excess.
Yeah. So to tell you a little secret, as far as fasting, I have fasted up to 14 days. It's water fast, that is. I've done up to a 14-day water fast, and I've never felt better. I remember walking down the hallways, different places, going, you look great, your skin is beautiful. So fasting is extremely beneficial. But in terms of, as you said, doing things in excess and our body's ability to regulate things, so one big example of that is whenever we eat too much sugar, our insulin basically goes up to help us dispose of that excess carbohydrates that we've consumed. The other thing is doing exercise. If we exercise, we burn up a lot of those excess because our bodies can only store but so much. And if we don't find a way to burn off or get rid of the glucose that's in our bodies that's causing inflammation, we are going to end up in the worst way. So anything, like we said, can be toxic in its extremes and if it's not controlled.
So let's talk about some of those other things that can cause inflammation, because I feel that there's a lot of, aside from glucose or excess sugars, what else is out there?
So there are, a number of things that can cause, apart from sugars. So when you think about your stomach, and depending on where you are on the spectrum of things, our genetics kind of impacts the way in which we adapt to things. One little known fact that I discovered recently is that folks of African descent actually have a stronger immune system than Europeans. But folks of African descent also are predisposed for certain autoimmune conditions. So that's why it is so important to look at yourself and not necessarily relate. Pay attention to what's going with other folks, but what works for you may not work for someone else. So certain foods, high fiber foods, can cause inflammation for some people because some people don't deal with high fiber foods very well. Grains, for example, the grains that we buy in the store today is not the same grains that used to be around thousands of years ago. So because of genetic changes in our food and because of how the industry has tried to find a way to mass produce things, our bodies sometimes don't deal with grains as well as it should. So depending on your genetics, you may be predisposed to um, not to deal with these things in the best way. So, like, pay attention to how your body um, deals with things. If you have bloating, gas, look for skin rash, any kind of response that seems to be um, out of the norm, get it checked out and kind of understand. You may need to take a food diary to see, what you've eaten over the past couple of days, and kind of eliminate those things from your diet if necessary. Eliminate them, and then if work, reintroduce them back into your diet and kind of truly identify what is impacting you.
Hmm.
Uh,
I just one thing that surprises me, but I think it's a wake up call for us all, is when you talk about grains. Right away, we think, well, grains are good. They're natural. Yeah, that's what we should be. Load up on that. It's great. You buy bread, multi-grain bread. In your perception is, this is really healthy. But what a point you bring, Lorraine, in that it's not the same as it was back in the day. It's very different. Pesticides and the way it's grown and everything, right?
yeah. Like, even corn, if you look at corn, trace back history with corn, what corn used to look like um, when America was just discovered, very different from the corn we buy in the shop today. So not all of us have the ability. We may not have the microbes in our intestines to actually appropriately break down what's been presented on a table. And that's why it's so important to buy foods locally versus things that are imported from other regions. Because things that are imported are grown in such a manner for long shelf life. So it stays um, uh, it stays on the shelf longer before we get it. And they add things into those products, or they grow it with things to make it harder to break down. And that's the same thing happening to our body. We are ingesting things that the agriculture industry or commercial side of the world has added for longer shelf life. But now that we ingest these things, our body's like, okay, now you're putting something in me for longer shelf life, but we don't want the longer shelf life in our bodies. We need to get rid of it somehow. And quite often our body's just in a array, like, I've never seen this before. How do I deal with these chemicals that are supposed to just maintain things on the shelf and not in our body?
Can you take us through our digestive system and what we could be doing to really mess it up with with what we're consuming and or not?
So one thing is, I'm a big pro- I
Proponent?
support
Yeah.
is you need to eat as much whole, healthy food that you possibly can. Avoid as much highly processed food, because that'll mess up your body. Your body sometimes it gets this great influx of things that are highly processed, and it hits our bloodstream too quickly, and it really messes up the functionality of our system. Our gut, our intestines, is a closed system, and we have a layer of our epithelium cells that help to block out things that should not cross into our bloodstream. And if there's any damage to that, it's a single layer of cells. Any damage to that can create what they call like a leaky gut or irritable bowel syndrome and things of that nature. Allowing things that shouldn't cross the barrier into our system, and which can end up in our brain cells, it can end up messing up certain of our glands. So we have to be very protective of what we eat. If you think about it, like I said, there's even our microbiome. Our microbiome changes at the change of the weather, if not even quicker. And by exposing ourselves to antibiotics and certain foods that can impact the microbiome, which is those trillions of cells or bacteria that live in our system, that's our parasitic environment, any change in that system at any given time can really upset our stomach. Our body won't know what to do. The relationship we have with our microbiome is extremely important. And there's no such thing as messing up your microbiome 100%. there are some things that can be gained back over a period of time. You just don't want to overload your system all at once. One of the best things that people can do, and even though a lot of people aren't a great proponent of this, is actually a carnivore diet as an elimination diet. Carnivore diet is not good necessarily long term, although there's a few people that excel on a carnivore diet. But of all the diets that can help you identify what's going on with your body, carnivore diet happens to be one of them. And if you don't do a carnivore diet, there are other ways of actually identifying what is good for you and what's not. You may not know what your body is fighting until you stop ingesting those things. And then when you try to reintroduce it and your body says, hey, I've already dealt with this and you got rid of it for me. Why are you bringing it back? And that's when the adverse reactions may take place. So doing some form of elimination diet can be of great benefit to you, whichever form that you take.
I don't know if you've ever heard this, but you bring up a reminder with the carnivore diet. Someone who deals with nutrition told me fairly recently that if you eat meat and starch, like meat and potatoes, which is kind of a staple of the American diet, it causes the meat to rot in your stomach, and their feeling is you should never eat the two together. If you want to have a vegetable, don't do potatoes or French fries or anything like that, or even corn. Do broccoli or some kind of vegetable. Have you ever heard that?
I've heard that before, and that's not necessarily a thing. If your your digestive system is functioning properly, your food is going to pass right through, and your body will extract what it needs and keep on moving. So there's no rotting in the stomach. Our bodies are built with the gastric juices to break down the biodiversity of meat and take out what it needs, right? And then everything else goes through. So if someone is not going to the bathroom regularly, then there's a concern in general, not because you're eating meat in particular, but there's something going on with your digestive system, and it could be due to stress, because stress does impact your digestive system, why things are not flowing the way it should. I think we mentioned on our last conversation the whole thing of fiber. Fiber is what's taken to bulk up your stool, right? Which is not necessarily the best thing for you. Why would you want to make more stool in your gut? Fiber is good. The one good thing fiber does, depending on your diet, it does feed your microbiome, because our bodies are not built to break down fiber. Our microbiome, those little friendly bacteria, basically, that's like a little pharmacy in our stomach. They basically break down the fiber and produce things that our body can take advantage of, such as amino acids and things of that nature. And if you think of it also in terms of the other things, you just need to, with fiber that is, the other point with fiber is related to it can block. Too much fiber will form this lattice within our intestines and sometimes prevent our bodies from being able to absorb what it needs. So increasing fiber is not always a good thing. You increase your fiber based on what your body needs at any given time, but not just because.
Wow. See, my vision of this is fiber helps you move things through, things that you've already eaten, and it just keeps things moving, if you will. Is that the primary function?
No, fiber is mainly to feed your gut bacteria, and the microbiome and to produce amino acids that your body can function off. If you're not eating meat, for someone who's on a vegan diet, for example, they don't eat meat, but they have to get amino acids from somewhere. So their microbiome is even much more important to balance if they're not eating the right combinations of fiber. And the amino acids, without amino acids, we won't be able to build our own muscles and be able to function optimally. when it comes to eating meats, for someone who's on let's say, a Mediterranean diet, keto diet, a more regular diet, or even carnivore, amino acids are available in the meat form. So the key reason for fiber is amino acids, and for our gut, and to feed our friendly gut bacteria, and even our unfriendly. So we need a balance of both. Now, it has been, for whatever reason, over the years, we've been informed that we need fiber to be able to be regular.
Yes.
And there is reasons for saying that, but it all depends on the other combination of foods that we're eating. So that's why we have to really balance things out. If we remove appropriate fat from our diets, then of course, now you're going to be more dependent on fiber, which can have other adverse reactions depending on the state that you're in. So you need to have healthy fats in your diet that helps you pass your stool right on through.
Should we have extra fiber?
I don't think we should. I don't think it's necessary, but an individual may have conditioned their body in such a way that they become dependent on extra fiber on a regular basis. One of the responses that a lot of our medical professionals give us when we're constipated or something's going on with our bodies, you need to increase your fiber, and not truly exploring what is truly going on with you to cause that constipated impact on our bodies. And it may be because of the job that you're in. You're highly stressed, and maybe if you do things to reduce your stress, if you get more adequate sleep, if you drink more water, that may improve your digestive system, and not just adding fiber, like throwing spaghetti on the wall, essentially, just to try and move it out. Because now, like I said, you're impacting your rate of digestion or absorption of food that goes to your body by putting this network. Think of yourself going through a field full of roses, for example. You know how the everything kind of intertwines between each other? Throwing more roses and more vines in is not going to help you get through it better. It's going to just create more obstruction. And now you're going to eat more and more to keep your levels of nutrients up to where you need it to be.
You make that very clear, because I think we all assume that you should be having more fiber to move things forward. But now that I'm hearing it from you, you take fiber, you may be moving things forward, but now you're speeding up the absorption. Your system isn't getting what it should be getting. And you wouldn't need fiber in the first place, added fiber, if you were eating the right things anyway. Just a lot of things here that we don't realize that you bring to light, Coach Lorraine. I appreciate that. How do we find you? If somebody's got questions, if they want to connect with you, maybe work with you on a consult level, how do we do that?
The best way to reach out to me is on my website, LorraineCuff.com, or email me at coach at LorraineCuff.com, or even check out my YouTube channel at Lorraine Cuff.
Oh, you know what? I never even thought of doing that. So thank you. I didn't think that you might have a channel or what's up there, but always great information. And I love the way you break it down. So it's just, no pun intended, but bite-sized pieces. You know, we have busy lives, and it's sometimes hard to figure stuff out and remember it. But even just some of the reminders today and some of the new, for the rest of us, new stuff about this inflammation, truly appreciate it. Thanks for being here.
Great. Just trying to make things digestible.
Absolutely. All right. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Steve. You
Thanks.
have a good one.
You too.